Okay, let's dive in. There's just something about dividend stocks, isn't there? This idea you get paid just for owning a piece of a company.
Yeah, it really is appealing. Passive income, right. Money working for you while you, do other things.
Exactly. And you see some stocks, they offer these really high yields, you know, 6%, 7%, sometimes even more. It's very tempting.
Incredibly tempting. Feels like you found a shortcut, maybe. A faster way to build that income stream.
It does. But, the source material we're digging into today, it throws up a pretty big caution sign. It basically says sometimes that high yield, it's not a reward. It could actually be a warning.
Right. It introduces this idea of the dividend yield trap. That high number might be hiding something.
Mm-hmm. And the source gets specific. It really questions investing in two very popular dividend names, ones you see in a lot of income portfolios, AT&T and Realty Income.
Yeah, big names, familiar names.
So our mission today really is to unpack what this source material is saying. Why are these stocks so popular? And then crucially, what are the specific arguments for why they might be these potential traps? We want to pull out the key insights for you.
Okay, so let's start with that concept first, the yield trap. What the material suggests is that sometimes a high yield isn't like a bonus for owning a great company. It's more like hazard pay is the term they use.
Hazard pay. Wow, that's strong phrase. It implies you're getting paid extra for taking on some serious risk.
Exactly. And the source connects this to behavioral finance stuff, ideas like yield addiction or the dividend illusion.
Ah, okay. So the idea is you get so focused on that nice high payout number.
Yeah, laser focused on the dividend itself.
That you kind of stop looking closely at the actual business.
Exactly.
Are they making money? Do they have a ton of debt?
Precisely. You become fixated on the check, the payout, and you might miss pretty clear signs that the underlying company is struggling or, maybe even shrinking.
So it's like getting a regular payment from someone, but you're ignoring the fact they're racking up huge debts and might not be able to pay you next month.
That's a good analogy. And the material argues this fixation can lead you to hold on to a stock that's actually losing value. And worse, that dividend you love might eventually get cut anyway.
Which brings us, I guess, directly to the first company the material puts under the microscope, AT&T, ticker T. The source even calls it something like the yield trap that keeps on trapping.
Yeah, strong words again. And AT&T, well, it is popular. For ages, it's been seen as this rock, safe, stable telecom giant. The go-to income stock for so many people.
Definitely. And the yield right now, according to the source's context for 2025, it's up there, like 6.5%, 7% range. It catches your eye.
It absolutely does. But the immediate counterpoint in the material is, well, maybe that yield is high because the business is, and I quote, a flaming hot mess.
Okay, flaming hot mess. They're not holding back. And Exhibit A for this argument seems to be the big dividend cut back in 2022.
Right. Nearly 50%, wasn't it, after they spun off Warner Media?
Yeah. And the source notes, the company might have called it strategic, but for anyone relying on that income.
It was a huge hit, a drastic cut to what they were expecting. The material uses this to say, look, that dividend wasn't nearly as safe as people thought.
And beyond the cut, the material points to some pretty serious financial concerns.
Yeah.
Like the debt load. It mentions over $130 billion in long-term debt.
That's a staggering number. I mean, yes, telecom needs capital, lots of it. Yeah. But the source argues that level of debt, combined with what it calls a stagnant revenue picture, a declining old wireline business, and just brutal competition in 5G, it paints a picture of a company facing some major, major headwinds.
The critique also goes into management decisions, past acquisitions. It mentions DirecTV, Time Warner, describing them as these really expensive detours that didn't pan out.
Right. And again, spinoffs or what the source calls fire sales. It raises questions about the overall strategy, calls it management whiplash.
So if we boil down the source's reasons for flagging AT&T, number one, they already cut the dividend hard, suggesting it wasn't secure and maybe isn't now. Number two, this combo of massive debt and slow, maybe no growth.
Plus the intense price wars in telecom, squeezing profits, and then this general concern about, well, where's the company actually heading strategically?
No. Makes sense from that perspective. Let's shift to the second company the source examines. Realty Income, ticker O. The title for this section is pretty provocative, too. The monthly dividend lie we all believe.
Yeah, Realty Income it's huge in the dividend world, partly because of that branding, right? The monthly dividend company.
It's brilliant marketing.
It really is. They've built this incredibly loyal following. It's often seen as like REIT royalty, real estate investment trust royalty.
And that monthly payout, that's a big part of the magic, isn't it? Getting paid every month feels different than every quarter.
It does feel different, more like a regular paycheck. The material acknowledges that, the psychology of it, but it argues the timing of the payout, monthly versus quarterly, is mostly a nice psychological trick.
Meaning it doesn't actually make the underlying business any better or worse.
Exactly, doesn't change the fundamentals. And the source does raise concerns about those fundamentals, specifically Realty Income's heavy reliance on certain types of retail tenants.
Like what types?
Well, it lists things like dollar stores, pharmacies like Walgreens, convenience stores, even some older chain restaurants.
Okay, so businesses we see everywhere. What's the concern there?
The argument is that this whole segment of retail is vulnerable. Think about the shift to online shopping, remote work changing habits, ghost kitchens impacting restaurants. The source suggests traditional brick and mortar, especially these types, is getting gutted.
That's a long-term risk for the tenants, and so a risk for the landlord, Realty Income.
That's the connection they make. And then there's the growth model. Realty Income grows mainly by buying more property.
Which means taking on debt.
Yep. Acquisitions usually need leverage, debt. And this is where the source raises another red flag, especially with interest rates being higher now.
Right, borrowing costs more.
Exactly. So piling on debt for acquisitions in a high-rate environment, the material calls that a potential time bomb. It makes growth more expensive, potentially strains the finances.
Okay, so vulnerability in the tenant base and risk in the growth strategy due to debt and interest rates. What about the dividend itself, aside from being monthly?
Well, the source notes that while it's consistent, the growth rate of that dividend has been kind of modest, maybe 3% to 4% a year recently.
And the point is?
The point is, that's been less than inflation some years. So even though you get that monthly check, its actual buying power might be going down over time.
Got it. So summarizing the source's concerns on Realty Income: overexposure to potentially troubled retail sectors, sensitivity to rising interest rates because of the debt-fueled acquisition model, the risk within those acquisitions themselves.
And the idea that the whole monthly dividend appeal might distract people from looking closely at these underlying issues.
Okay. Now, whenever you talk about potentially ditching stocks like these, ones with long dividend records, people always push back, right? They say, but look at the history. They've paid forever.
Oh, yeah. That's a very powerful argument, that history feels safe, like a promise.
But the source disagrees.
It pushes back hard. It basically says history is just data. It's what happened before. It's not some ironclad guarantee of the future.
Okay.
And it gives examples, big companies, household names with amazing dividend track records. Think GE, Kraft Heinz, Anheuser-Busch, that eventually ran into serious trouble and had to cut their dividends. History didn't save them.
So applying that to AT&T and Realty Income, the source seems to be saying AT&T's recent history is the warning sign. The cut already happened.
Exactly. It shows even giants can stumble due to bad decisions or market shifts. And for Realty Income, the history shows consistency, yes, but also, according to the source, slower growth and this underlying vulnerability to how the world is changing, especially in retail.
So history matters, but you can't just look at history. You need to look at the present situation, the future prospects.
That's the core argument. Combine history with a clear-eyed view of today's fundamentals.
All right, so if the source flags these two popular stocks as potential yield traps, what does it say makes for a better dividend investment? It doesn't just name stocks to buy, right? It talks about characteristics.
That's right. No hot stock tips, but it shifts focus to the quality of the business behind the dividend. It talks about looking for companies with a real staying power.
What does that mean in practice?
It means things like consistent dividend growth, not just a high yield now, but a history of increasing the payout. It means global scale, solid management teams, diverse ways of making money.
Strong balance sheets, too, I imagine.
Yeah.
Less debt.
Definitely. Strong balance sheets, predictable business models, companies that are actually, growing, not just managing decline or what the source calls financial dumpster fires.
Okay, so healthy, growing businesses.
Precisely. And the key takeaway here, the source suggests, is that these kinds of companies, they might not offer that super high yield right up front. It might look lower, maybe less exciting initially.
But the argument is that the dividend is safer, more likely to grow.
Exactly, because the business itself is solid, well-run, expanding. The dividend is much more likely to be sustainable. It's likely to increase over time. And, crucially, you might get better total returns because the stock price isn't constantly fighting against fundamental problems.
So this really circles back to the main message from the source material we reviewed. Just chasing the highest yield number you see without really digging into the business behind it.
It's risky. You need to look at the debt, the growth outlook, the management quality, what's happening in their industry.
And the source uses AT&T and Realty Income as specific examples, case studies if you will, arguing that in these cases, that appealing yield might be distracting investors from some significant issues the source sees.
Yeah, potential fundamental problems hiding behind an attractive payout.
And that's really the key nugget for you, the listener, to take away. The source is urging you to look under the hood of any dividend stock. Don't just get mesmerized by the yield percentage.
Ask the tough questions. Is this payout sustainable? How healthy is the actual business generating the cash for that dividend?
Yeah, it raises a really good question to think about. You probably wouldn't buy, say, a rental property that was clearly falling apart just because the owner promised you a small monthly check from the rent.
Right. You'd look at the property first. Is it sound? Can it actually keep generating rent?
So why, the source asks, would you do that with a stock? Focus on the health of the business first. Is it strong? Is it growing? Is it well managed?
If the answer is yes, then that dividend is likely on solid ground, maybe even set to grow. But if the business itself is shaky, well, that high yield might just be the bait on that yield trap we talked about.